Steve Gruber, your soldier of truth. I am the tip of the spear against all those liars out there. I'm here ready to fight for you from the foxhole of freedom. And please, remember to think, my friends, while it's still legal, this is the Steve Gruber Show. Here are 3 big things you need to know to start your day today. Number 1, Hurricane Idalia. Churning north toward Tampa Bay has become a powerful Category 4 hurricane overnight. Landfall not long away. We'll keep you updated throughout the rest of the 3 hours here. Number 2, in Colorado, a 12-year-old boy gets dragged out of class because he has a 3-inch "Don't Tread on Me" patch on his backpack. Insanity's everywhere. Number 3, for those of us that were not supporters of Joe Biden, those of us that knew he was a serial liar and a plagiarist for his entire life, we've not been surprised by his false claims. Too many to count since he jumped on the campaign trail, and certainly since he was led into the Oval Office for a nap. But his lies have often been very hurtful. Take what happened in Maui just a few days ago. He turned a human tragedy, with more than 115 Americans killed and as many as 1,000 Hawaiian residents still missing after a firestorm swept through the once very cool town of Lahaina. He took that opportunity to make it all about himself, like always. First, he couldn't pull himself away from his luxury oceanside vacation in California for almost 2 full weeks, and when he did finally bother to show up in Maui, he talked about a small kitchen fire in his Delaware beach house. It was put out in about 20 minutes. But the narcissist in chief decided to tell those in Maui how he was so devastated because he almost lost his cat and almost lost his 1966 Corvette, a car. He made these comments in front of people whose family members were incinerated by a wall of fire that was left to burn because one of the people in charge there in Hawaii believes that water is a godlike substance and could not be spared to spare the lives of those being burned alive for several hours. It's not the first time that Joe Biden has made an unspeakable tragedy about himself. In fact, you can pretty much count on him doing that every time. If there's death and destruction, then Joey's ready to step up and tell you why he understands, because he's had it happen to him. Because by God, he's been there. He has suffered like you. Except that he hasn't most of the time. Has Joe Biden suffered terrible loss in his life? Yes. But that doesn't make it the same as what these people in Hawaii went through, or worse, his disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, avoidable tragedy. Millions of people that voted for Joe Biden falsely bought into the idea that old Joe was going to be a moderate, a middle-of-the-road president that would work hard to unite the nation. But that has certainly not turned out to be the case, now has it? In fact, I think it's fair to argue that Joe Biden has become the most polarizing president in American history. He's not a moderate at all. He has governed from the extreme far left, and his presidency began to unravel a few months into office when he completely disregarded the advice of the Joint Chiefs and his military advisors and abandoned Afghanistan in some twisted need to leave before we mark the 20-year anniversary of being in that country. The reckless decision, the fractured command, and the murky rules of engagement led to the worst military failure since the end of the Vietnam War. 13 U.S. military members were killed by a suicide bomber and his partner. Both could have been taken out by American snipers before the bomb went off, but nobody would make the call. Biden's numbers plummeted, and he has never recovered. There are some very clear reasons for that. True to form, Joe Biden has never accepted responsibility at all for his epic failure of leadership in Afghanistan, but worse. Almost every time it comes up, he brings up his son, Bo, and talks about how he died in the Middle East and came home in a casket. The problem is, of course, that's just another lie that seems to percolate in the addled and dementia-filled mind of a senile old man. Bo did serve proudly in the U.S. military, but he died of cancer. He did not die in the line of service. And worse than not accepting responsibility and making his tragic failure into some sad false story about himself is that he continues to make those same baseless false story claims even now. It's heartbreaking. For the 13 gold-starred families initiated that day in Afghanistan, they met the caskets of their loved ones at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. So did Joe Biden, but he didn't want to be there. He kept looking at his watch. He didn't care about the men and women that died because he was too stubborn or too stupid to listen to his military advisors. And sadly, as we now mark the 2-year anniversary of those horrible days, the families have never believed he cared about anyone but himself. You know why? Because it's true. Here's Gold Star father Mark Schmitz. He says Joe Biden is not interested in helping out the families of the fallen. And more, this dad says the old man shouldn't be president at all. Listen.
Not a single person has been held accountable. Our so-called leader can't seem to even utter their names in public, not even once. Mr. Biden has run his entire political campaign for 50 years as the family man. Well, I've got news for you, sir. The curtain has been lifting, and that campaign slogan will never work again. We have seen what's going on in your family, and even worse, we've seen how you've been treating us as Gold Star families. And there couldn't be anything more disgusting and cowardly than the way you have treated us. You are a disgrace to this nation. You have no business having ultimate command over our military, and I regret not saying that to your face when I had the opportunity in Dover. I felt it more important to bite my tongue, but I also had more important things on my mind at that time, like receiving my son's lifeless body stateside. While I stood there on the tarmac, watching you check your watch over and over again, all I wanted to do was shout out, "It's 2:30. But out of respect to the other grieving families, I bit my tongue once again. Well, as you could probably tell by now, I'm done biting my tongue. You, sir, stole their lives, their futures, their dreams, and have ripped apart 13 families. You cannot even man up and admit that."
Can't even man up and admit that. Now, a few weeks ago, California Congressman Darrell Issa brought those families together for the first time. Not the president, not the White House, Darrell Issa. Yeah, something the White House clearly should have done, but didn't care enough to do. You know, like visiting other victims in places like East Palestine, Ohio, and things involving real Americans suffering from real tragedies. They just do not matter to the senile geezer. You know, actions do speak louder than words. And Joe's actions are being called out this week loudly and clearly. Here's another family member of one of the 13 fallen in Afghanistan. Listen to this.
What he could have done was not talk about his son when it was about my son and the other 12 on that day. I have never spoken to him since. He's refused to speak with us. He does not have any coordinates to talk with us. He could call me. I have a phone number. He could call me. I'm not sure what he could do at this point. Honor them, say their names, talk about them. Yeah. And man up and talk about your failures that you held in Afghanistan.
Yeah, that is why Joe Biden's numbers, that's where it began to fall apart. Making it all about himself every single time and never about the people in the face of the tragedy. As we face this hurricane today, more death. It's imminent because people didn't leave. They underestimated the storm. It happens every single time. Will Joe Biden make it about himself? Of course he will. More about Afghanistan after the break.